There are many things in life that are certain. Taxes, death, and Andros cheating death to launch an all-out invasion of the Lilat system. What's also certain is the galaxy's response. 4 furry soldiers of fortune piloting sleek starfighters. And also flying through rings. Lots and lots of rings. Ahoy there! Nintendo's Star Fox series is a byword for space shooting. Most of the time. Core to the Star Fox team's success of thwarting Andros and other villains is the agile fighter craft called the Arwing. The most consistent aspects of the Arwing are its central fuselage, blue pods, and extendable wings. Today, on this special episode of Virtual Garage, we're commemorating the new Star Fox game by examining the Arwing of the Star Fox series, going over its changes over the years, deciphering why one version of this ship has become the de facto design, and discovering how the ship lost its way. It's complicated, really. In 1993, Nintendo released the original Star Fox on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. This rail shooter made waves with its use of the Super FX chip for 3D graphics that, while very primitive by today's standards, were also revolutionary for the time. 3D was starting to take off at the time, with Star Fox beating the first 3D capable console of the time, the 3DO, to market by 6 to 7 months. In Star Fox, players step into the cockpit of Fox McCloud's Arwing, flying through arches and rings while shooting at everything that moves. Well, almost everything. The original Arwing established the silhouette of the ship that would be used in the series, but has 3 separate versions. The first is the illustrated ships on the box art. The second is the higher level of detail ships used in the control screen and at the end of the game. The third is the familiar triangle composed of many more triangles. The shape of the Arwing resembles the letter A, a comparison confirmed by series creator Shigeru Miyamoto. The Arwing is propelled by a thruster mounted behind the fuselage with 2 prongs on either side of the cockpit called gravity diffusers, aka G-diffusers. The G-diffusers serve as the series' anti-gravity device, but how these work in aiding its flight capabilities is unclear. The craft can either fire an afterburner for a short speed boost or activate an air brake or retro rockets to slow to a crawl when extra maneuverability is desired. However, the wings are relatively fragile. If a wing breaks, it negatively affects flight stability. The Arwing carries an armament of 3 laser types, 1 single laser coming from presumably the nose cone, twin blasters from the G-diffuser prongs, and stronger lasers from the same prongs. Worth noting, the first 2 laser types are rendered as polygons in the game, but the third type uses scaled sprites. In the first game, it can carry a stock of 5 smart bombs, similar to bombs in other shoot-'em-up games like Raiden. But if a wing breaks off, it downgrades the laser to the first level. Unlike later entries, a broken wing persists through levels until the player grabs a wing repair power-up. Each of the 4 Arwings have audio-visual communicators, with a cutaway of each pilot being shown to discern who's speaking, even if most of what they said was gibberish. This allows the Star Fox team to communicate with each other, such as distress calls or finding secret paths, but mostly distress calls. The Arwing in its first outing proved itself as a worthy aircraft of the mercenary Star Fox team, and its capabilities would only improve in the next game. But those capabilities wouldn't be realized in its own time. Star Fox was set to get a direct sequel known as Star Fox 2, originally set to release in 1995. However, the flat-shaded polygons brought to the Super Nintendo via the Super FX2 chip couldn't hold a candle to the texture map polygons and CDs of the 3DO, the Sega Saturn, or the Sony PlayStation. Though Star Fox 2 was cancelled back in the mid-90s, a handful of near-complete versions circulated onto the internet, giving those curious a taste of what could have been. It wouldn't be until 2017 and the release of the Super Nintendo Classic Edition microconsole that Star Fox 2 would become more widely accessible to the masses. Star Fox 2 was a bonus game added to the system and serves as the only official release of the game. And a new Star Fox meant a new Arwing. Actually, many new craft in the Arwing lineage. Ships similar to the Arwing were playable based on the different pilots and their individual strengths and weaknesses. But the focus is on the Prime Arwing, once again piloted by Fox McCloud. The Arwing in Star Fox 2 is similar to the first one, but adds a couple of new features. The biggest addition is that the craft can transform into a bipedal chicken walker to engage ground targets. Many of the game's missions revolve around the walker mode. The other additions include all-range free-roaming flight and a charge shot that locks onto targets. This is charged by holding down the fire button and launched by pressing the fire button again. With the other craft in the game, their boost, weapon power, shield strength, and charge times all vary depending on one's playstyle and the personalities of the 5 other pilots, though only 2 pilots are active at a time. Even though Star Fox 2 wouldn't get its time in the spotlight until 22 years after its cancellation, many of this game's ideas would be reused in future Star Fox games. This includes the next Star Fox game in 1997, but don't call it a sequel.
Open the wing.
Nintendo released their first true 3D console in 1996 with the Nintendo 64. As polarizing as it was when it was new, it's hard to argue about the strength of its first-party library. 1997's Star Fox 64 was no different. It brought force feedback to the console world via the Rumble Pack. It had free-roaming gameplay similar to the cancelled Star Fox 2. It had 4-player split-screen multiplayer, and on top of all that, an all-new Arwing. And by that, I do mean all new. Star Fox 64 served as a soft reboot of the franchise, though most of its core ideas remained unchanged. Andros has returned from exile to wage war on the Lilat system, and the Star Fox team were called on to save the day. The game offered many branching routes with a handful of levels featuring 2 new vehicles, the Landmaster tank and the Blue Marine submarine. However, the Arwing kept central to the gameplay. The reborn Arwing kept the same basic shape as the original SNES design, but is more symmetric with the triangular G-diffuser pods. The wings can now shift their positions based on flight conditions, being fully retracted while traveling through space, open when in atmosphere, and fully extended in all-range combat. In this sense, it resembles the wings of the real-life F-14 Tomcat fighter jet, even if they function differently. At certain points in the game, the wings fully extend into all-range mode for free-roaming combat. This is one of the many ideas cribbed from Star Fox 2 on top of the addition of a lock-on charge shot. When upgrading the weapons, a pair of new laser cannons will extend from inside the G-diffusers. If a wing breaks off, the Arwing will drift to one side of the screen and it'll slowly descend to the bottom of the screen if both wings break. Of course, that means it downgrades the lasers to the lowest level. The Arwing in 64 can perform evasive aerial maneuvers such as somersaults and U-turns. U-turns can only be done in all-range mode, but somersaults can be done at any time, provided there's enough boost meter to do so. In the first game, the Arwing can be seen traveling through hyperspace without a warp point in a couple of levels. In 64, the Arwing is incapable of unassisted FTL travel and has to use warp points to do so. There's a series of warp rings in the Meteo asteroid field and a set of warp gates in Sector X. It's similar to the Jedi starfighters in the Star Wars prequel trilogy. The ships are so small that they can't fit an internal hyperdrive or something to that extent. The design of the new Arwing is one that would be reused later in the series, including the remake of 64 on the 3DS handheld. Like the rest of the game, the design of the Arwing remains faithful to the original N64 design, but is of much higher quality. We'll save the other appearances of this ship design for later. With the rebooted Star Fox, it seemed like things were going well for the Arwing and the mercs that maintained them. But little did fans know that there was going to be an unexpected detour through the galaxy years later. The story of Star Fox Adventures is a tricky one.
Very funny, sir.
I know!
Originally envisioned as a game similar to The Legend of Zelda developed by the UK-based Rare, it slowly morphed into a Star Fox game at the behest of Shigeru Miyamoto. Ultimately, it was Rare's first, only, and last game developed for the Nintendo GameCube, as they would be bought by Microsoft only a day after the game launched. Taking place several years after Andross's defeat in 64, the Star Fox team have become complacent in this time of peace. Falco quits and both the Great Fox and the Arwings fall into disrepair. The new design of the Arwing reflects that. Rubbing salt on the wound is the fact that the iconic ship would be woefully underutilized in the game. Instead of on-rails space combat, the main gameplay of Adventures takes on that of the aforementioned Zelda games, namely Ocarina of Time. The only times the Arwing is used is during traveling sequences between other fragments of Dinosaur Planet. As brief as they are, they feature classic Star Fox gameplay that's almost as good as 64. The biggest differences being that the Arwing lost its charge shot ability. This time, instead of a nose-mounted cannon, the G-diffusers are in their twin cannon configuration but fire alternating shots until they're upgraded to twin lasers. The Arwing also lost some of its mobility, lacking its somersaults but retaining its boosting. This time though, the wings function identically to the F-14 Tomcat, extending when slowing and retracting when speeding up. Since canonically the remaining team were strapped for resources, Fox had to retrieve fuel cells on the surface to travel between areas. That was all easier said than done, as all the Zelda-like gameplay got in the way. The last time the player has control of the Arwing in Adventures is, spoiler, the final boss fight against a resurrected Andross. It was a good finish for a criminally underused gameplay format, but it does seem rushed thanks to the game's late shift in focus and Rare's looming buyout. After Rare's outing with Star Fox, it seemed like Nintendo themselves didn't have clear direction for the Star Fox series. So they continued to shop out the franchise to other game developers. This led to a very sharp redesign of the Arwing, pun intended.
Yeah, very funny, sir. Fox out.
The outcome of this battle hangs on you, team. Are you all ready? Launch all ships.
With Rare no longer available to work on Nintendo consoles, the next Star Fox game would be developed by Namco. In what I can best describe as a cross between Ace Combat, Galaxian, and Halo, Star Fox Assault goes back to the shoot everything that isn't friendly style of gameplay, with a new design philosophy for the Star Fox universe. Of course, the Arwing received the most dramatic redesign of all versions of this ship. In contrast to the smooth edges and grime of its Adventures incarnation, the Assault Arwing is sleek, edgy, and very busy. The shape is still unmistakably the Arwing, but with a lot more sharp edges and distorted proportions. It's almost like Michael Bay having sex with a Gundam. In gameplay, it carries over all its features from 64, including the charge shot, somersaults, and U-turns. But in all range levels, Fox can exit the Arwing and continue fighting on foot. Depending on the level, he can also get into the redesigned Landmaster tank or stand on the wing of an Arwing or Wolfen and shoot at things with a plasma cannon. Juggling between these vehicles and modes feels jarring considering this is a linear campaign. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of this Arwing. It's the busiest looking Arwing, and I don't mean that in a good way. The proportions look off, and it doesn't really look like a ship in the Star Fox series. Hell, even this early design from when Nintendo and Namco started work on this game looks off. But let me tell you, I'd rather have the Assault design instead of this early design. On one hand, Assault's focus on action rather than adventure resonated better with fans. On the other, it felt like the Japanese were trying too hard to copy Halo. The next Star Fox would try to right the course, keeping Fox in his Arwing while bringing back yet another element from Star Fox 2. Nintendo themselves joined forces with Q Games, who themselves consisted of former Argonaut software developer Dylan Cuthbert, who helped with Star Fox and Star Fox 2. This team-up led to 2006's Star Fox Command, exclusive to the Nintendo DS handheld. It also happened to be a reincarnation of the cancelled Star Fox 2 with its strategic elements and multitude of ships inspired by the Arwing with their own strengths and weaknesses. And with a new Star Fox came a new Arwing. Enter the Arwing 2. The Arwing 2 goes back to the more traditional Arwing design, with the only change between the original ship being the third fin behind the cockpit. It's a more streamlined design that fits with the game's comic book art style. Functionally, it stays true to the Arwing's play mechanics starting in 64, but the ship can barrel roll multiple times at the cost of boost meter thanks to the touchscreen control. This is used as a rolling attack against the enemy motherships. Players have to simultaneously roll the ship and fly through beacons to destroy the enemy ship. If one beacon is missed, the ship will shoot down the Arwing. If the player flies through all of them, they torpedo the mothership Independence Day style.
Hello, boys! I'm back!
Even with the new Arwing, the assault design wasn't completely eschewed. Later in the game's story, depending on the choices the player made, both Peppy Hare and the late James McLeod pilot the original Arwing based on the assault form. Though simplified in terms of detail, it looks more like a hybrid of prior Arwings with its texture work. It's clear that the Arwing and Star Fox were getting back on track, and with 64 3D, it seemed like Nintendo and Q Games could do no wrong. But then the Wii U happened.
Open the wings!
Not taking 64 3D into consideration, there was almost a 10-year drought in the Star Fox series. Star Fox had skipped the Wii altogether. By 2012, Nintendo had released their Wii U console to lukewarm reception. Criticism was singled out at the gamepad for being chunky, clunky, and having poor battery life. However, Nintendo were seeking to end the Star Fox drought with a new Star Fox game that took advantage of the new gamepad. On top of that, Platinum Games, the developers of Nier, Metal Gear Rising, and Bayonetta, would assist Nintendo in the development of the project. How did this go so wrong? Star Fox Zero serves as another narrative reboot for the series, this time taking place in a parallel timeline to Star Fox 64. Naturally, the Arwing design in Zero is a refined version of the 64 3D ship, which itself was a refined version of the 64 ship. While similar to previous incarnations of the craft, the Zero Arwing made a couple of controversial changes. The laser cannons were now motion controlled, using the Wii U gamepad for targeting. The ship could also transform into a walker for ground engagements and for defeating certain bosses. Yet another idea pulled from Star Fox 2. When thinking about the control scheme in real life, it was seen as an unnecessary gimmick and hard on the hands. The constant need to recalibrate the gamepad's gyroscopes didn't help matters either. It's sad because with the game's co-op mode, there's a taste of what could have been. Star Fox Zero's co-op mode puts player 1 in charge of the gamepad and its smart guns, while player 2 uses either a Wii Remote and Nunchuck or Wii U Pro Controller to maneuver the ship and fire its own yellow laser. It's not possible to play the game entirely on the player 2 side since they don't have access to charge shots. Upgrading weapons is similar to previous entries in the series, but with Zero, it's possible for the Arwing to go down a blaster level from sustaining too much damage. This doesn't take broken wings into account, and from what I've noticed, the wings are unbreakable. Zero contained 2 variants of the Arwing, both of which could be unlocked either by playing the game or tapping the Fox and Falco amiibo figures on the gamepad. The Falco amiibo unlocks the Black Arwing, which is an Arwing with an inverted color scheme that goes faster and hits harder but takes more damage. In a sense, it's like the Arwing version of Akuma from Street Fighter. The Fox amiibo unlocks the Retro Arwing, styled after the original SNES ship. It functions identically to the standard ship, but plays the SNES Corneria theme on, well, Corneria. It's a neat bonus in a game that revived the last piece of ideas from Star Fox 2, even if it is Star Fox Zero. If the Arwing controlled better, it could have been the definitive version of the ship. But as it stands, it's a sad reminder of Nintendo's worst console generation. Our story is not over yet, however.
Sounds like you got a few bad guys to catch.
Hold up. It's our fight too.
What'd you have in mind?
All portals come with a unique energy signature.
Oh.
If these guys use that device again, we can track them down before they even know it.
Okay.
Sounds like a plan.
In 2018, the Toys to Life fad was on its way out, with both Activision and Disney oversaturating the market with plastic toys with NFC chips inside. Sure, Nintendo was part of this with Amiibo, but those became more of collector's pieces due to artificial scarcity. But in 2018, perhaps as a last gasp of the craze, Ubisoft released Starlink Battle for Atlas, where the game centered on space combat. While technically a Toys to Life game, the entire game could be played without the toys. Though the game came out on all consoles at the time, the Nintendo Switch version got exclusive content in the form of a Star Fox chapter of the story. This chapter and the Star Fox team were integrated seamlessly into the main campaign. Both the Star Fox characters and the characters original to the game interacted directly with each other. It was only fitting that the Nintendo Switch starter kit for the game featured the Arwing as a ship. Drawing heavily from the Zero design, the Arwing is slightly more bulky to accommodate the additions of slots for supplemental weapons that could be attached. To me, it's like a blend of the Assault and Zero designs. While this Arwing doesn't control exactly like the other Star Fox games, it can still U-turn and do barrel rolls. If anything, this Arwing plays more like it's an Ace Combat than it was in Star Fox Assault. This Arwing also happens to be one of the few collectible toys based on the ship. The Arwing and Starlink was one of two successful collaborations between Nintendo and Ubisoft. It's just a shame that the Toys to Life thing died out just as the game released. Star Fox was adrift yet again. So what was Nintendo's response?
Atmospheric entry complete. Extend the wings.
Revisit Star Fox 64 for the third time. Nintendo announced a modern remake of Star Fox 64 for the Nintendo Switch 2, simply titled Star Fox. As 64 is regarded as one of the better entries in the series, if not the pinnacle of it, it made some sense to remake the game for a new audience. In spite of the new looks and new sounds, the 2026 Arwing is still the same ship we all know and love. But it learned a few new tricks along the way. The core design of the ship still follows the classic silhouette of the 64 ship, but has new armaments in multiplayer modes. In co-op, the laser cannons become the smart guns of Star Fox Zero when player 2 uses the second Joy-Con 2 controller, able to be aimed independently of the flight controls. In Versus multiplayer, the ship gains a tractor beam to tow cargo to a goal in a mode similar to Capture the Flag. When you stop to look closer at the Arwing, each ship has its own unique set of decorations and cutscenes. Every ship has their pilot's name on it and a kill counter on the side, both inspired by real-life air combat. Falco's ship takes personalization a bit further by including artwork of a blue wing on each wing. Otherwise, the ship remains the same as its 64 incarnation. Say what you will about the looks of the space furries piloting them. The ships they fly looking the same is still a good thing. Fox McCloud's main aircraft became an icon of the space shooter subgenre. However, Nintendo struggled to find an outside developer who could do the craft justice after 64. Rare barely touched the thing. Namco made it second fiddle to the ground vehicles. Q Games only got 2 outings with it, with one being a remake, and Platinum Games were hamstrung by Nintendo's own dumb decisions in the Wii U era. Oh, and I guess there was Ubisoft, but nobody played Starlink. Out of all the Arwings, the design of the 64 Arwing has stood the test of time. It didn't have the worn-down, cartoony look of the adventure ship, and had none of the mecha-style edges of its Assault version. It could be because 64 and its 3DS remake didn't have make-or-break gimmicks. In my opinion, Star Fox 64 and its Arwing have aged like a fine wine. The game and its main fightercraft remain timeless classics. Even though Nintendo tried to throw fans a bone with the classic-style Arwing and Zero, the gameplay could not redeem it and effectively buried the Star Fox series for almost a decade. But with Fox McCloud and Star Fox 64 being reborn again, the Star Fox team and its iconic fighter is set to thrive in a new generation of gaming. Hopefully, Fox spends less time walking and more time flying. What vehicle or vehicle-related stories in gaming would you like to see on Virtual Garage? Please let me know. This has been Squiddy the Kid signing off. Like, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz.